Anyway, thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Diaz Moore and Mike Watson. We're going to turn it over to you to start this radical conversation.
All right. Well, thank you. And with that, I just want to commend Dr. Diaz Moore. I have the great pleasure of following that really inspiring introduction and have the great pleasure of preceding an inspiring conversation with him and Rob Ence, who, as you noted, just really wonderful to see you again, Rob, after so many years. I want to just take a moment to recognize Rob for the great leadership role that he played at AARP and the great leadership role you know him for across the state as well. He was somebody, when I was very junior in my career at AARP, was very warm and welcoming and took time to nurture young employees. So I just want to thank you so much. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you today. While I'm, so I have some slides. I'm gonna start the slideshow now. And while that's coming up, just want to do a minute to kind of introduce you to AARP and why we're working on livable communities. So y'all are probably aware of this, and you have also had the great pleasure to work with Rob and others over the years. But one of the things that why AARP works in communities is because we've heard from our members over the years that they want us to be allies with them and be their voice and be their champion when it comes to improving communities so they're great for them and their families. And that's something we heard roughly a decade ago when we started this work on livable communities in a more robust way across the enterprise in AARP. And it's something that we continue to hear now as we work in even more communities across the country. So I'm really pleased to be here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the kind of notion of age-friendly neighborhoods and how we can strengthen the connections. I know y'all have spent already a day talking about various aspects of age-friendly and the broad ecosystem that it's going to take to create communities that are great for all. So I'm not going to kind of do a deep dive on AARP's work in the age-friendly network, because I know you all are familiar with the concept of age-friendly, what the age-friendly network is, and the various aspects of it. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about some really tangible projects that AARP has been pleased to be a part of across the country, and frame it up with some kind of undergirding points on age inclusion and the importance of communities for all ages. And that when we talk about age-friendly, we're first talking about the needs of older adults and ensuring that they are met, but reinforcing the point that when older adults' needs are met, communities are great for all. So with that, I'm going to start advancing my slides. Just want to confirm, can everybody see the slides up on the screen? All right, seeing some nodding heads. So with that, the first point I want to make, which is something you all know better than anybody, the future is today. I think we've been talking about our aging population for decades, and we're now seeing a point where the broader kind of continuum of community leaders, broader spectrum of state leaders, federal leaders, and people across the country more broadly are much more aware of our aging population. That awareness is fantastic. Now it's time to act, as our kind of lead in set it up. One thing I want to underscore here too is that I think you all know this well because you know the demographic data, but for a very long time, a lot of the conversation about our aging community and our aging country has been around the boomers. It's almost kind of leads to this notion of, you see the demographic charts and the pig passing through the python. And I think in conversations that we've had with mayors across the country, it kind of almost led to this, like, we're planning for this now. But it's also really important to underscore that something you all know, we are aging in kind of in the future. We're aging today. And the reason we're doing that is because people are living longer, and there are some equally large generations that are following the boomers. I myself am a millennial, part of the kind of 83 million strong generation that is going to be turning 50 on January 1st, 2030. And I think that probably shocks a lot of people. Probably doesn't shock many of you because you've been studying this demographic data. But for a lot of people, they tend to continue to think of millennials in their 20s. But the first of us are going to be turning 50 in 2030. And the boomers, Gen Xers, who are often overlooked, so I want to shout them out here, and millennials are all going to be over the age of 50 in just 8 short years. And that has profound implications for our country today and for the future. The other thing, and this is a really foundational point for AARP's work on livable communities, is what you see up on the screen. And this is something you all know well. People just want to remain where they live. They want to remain in their homes. They want to remain in their communities. If you've worked with AARP, you know we have a robust research operation and we poll a lot. And we have asked this question probably 27 different ways over the last 15 to 20 years. And every single time we get the exact same answer, which is 8 to 10 people want to remain in their community. And that's because it's the truth and it's what we see, what you see in your work. And when we talk to local leaders across the country, we kind of want to underscore that folks want to live in the places they are today. So we need to be prepared. Another key point, which you all have probably talked about, I was looking at some of the beautiful art earlier in the graphic design, and I know that this came up, but we know that the world is not built for aging. I'm not going to kind of belabor this point because you all know well, but this comes down to the neighborhood level. Our housing is not built for us to age in place. Our mobility systems are not set up. The average person is going to outlive their ability to drive by 6 to 10 years, but still 87% of older adults drive as their primary form of transportation. At the same time, we also know that older adults are dramatically overrepresented in pedestrian fatalities in the majority of states in this country. And what this all leads to is neighborhoods that are not designed to ensure that we are able to be active, are able to socialize with each other, and able to strengthen connections across generations. So with that, we know that an age-friendly neighborhood and a neighborhood that has the features that is going to allow an older adult to age in place is a neighborhood for all. It's a neighborhood for everybody. And it's going to ensure that we're able to strengthen connections, share experiences, share those kind of stories from neighborhoods past as we move forward in our neighborhoods in the future. And one of the reasons for that is we know that, y'all know this as well, we all want the exact same things in the places we live. Sure, there are some differences between different generations, between Gen Z, millennials, boomers, Gen X. But when it comes down to it, when you ask people what they want, no matter their age, they want communities that are walkable. They want to be able to walk safely somewhere. They want, in general, a diversity of housing options in their neighborhood. And again, while this varies based on generation, a diversity of people as well. They also want access to transportation options. We are a nation that is built for driving, and by and large, people are getting around by doing that. But people also express that they want additional needs. And when it comes down to voting for it, we have seen that older adults and younger folks will vote for more transportation options and will vote to invest in more transportation options in their communities. We've seen this in referendums across the country. So with that, those are, I kind of have underscored the importance of age-friendly neighborhoods, what they mean for all ages, and the challenges with where we are today. You kind of frame this up with a sense of bold action and the need for action. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can get to those bold action through some quick actions and small steps, and the way that AARP works to do that beyond our work in supporting members that are part of the age-friendly network across the country. There are 702 communities across the country today that are part of the nationwide AARP network of age-friendly states and communities, as well as 9 states. And one of the ways that we support their work, we help facilitate connections. We host events just like you're hosting here today to kind of ensure that folks are able to learn from each other. But we also put our money where our mouth is and provide grant funding to support work in community that is going to create more age-friendly neighborhoods. I'm going to highlight a few ways that communities are doing that across the 8 domains of livability. One example that I want to highlight is, this is very, very fresh for me, as AARP is just coming off a 2-day event where we host a national workshop on the importance of housing for all ages. And one of the solutions that is so talked about from folks from Secretary Fudge to mayors to experts was accessory dwelling units or carriage houses and English basements. And the ability of those to allow people a way to age in place, earn a little bit of income, and stay with a family member or near a family member when they need family caregiving. So in the city of Lexington, Kentucky, a member of the Age-Friendly Network, their city's Department of Senior Services had heard from community residents who were interested in ADUs. And as they were working to update their comprehensive plan and pass an ordinance to allow increased permitting of accessory dwelling units, the city used the grant to go and host a design competition with the University of Kentucky, where design students developed model accessible ADUs. Those kind of real tangible products were then used to go do community engagement sessions with older adults and members of the public to gain feedback and input. The city also created a manual to help residents understand what it means to have an ADU on your property, what are the basics, what are the rules, what are the regulations, to then help encourage the permitting of all that. When the ordinance passed, the city has been set up to now receive calls in their city planning office and encourage more building and more development of ADUs. So this is just one of these quick action small grants that we think can really help set the table for those bold changes that we spoke about earlier. Another example I want to highlight from a different area of the country, in Birmingham, Alabama, another age-friendly community, and something that I'm sure we have talked about here today, from the importance of walkable, safe streets and having a range of transportation options from biking and more. In Birmingham, Alabama, in concert with, connected with the age-friendly effort, the Freshwater Land Trust received a grant to upgrade streets to create a new multimodal pathway connecting the community from kind of their core, some downtown neighborhood areas, to some access to public spaces and a trail system that was right outside town. So having these vital connections that are accessible, visible, and safe to ensure that people are actually using them and stem that tide of the rise of pedestrian fatalities that we've seen in recent years is another really important way that these quick action, volunteer-driven projects can advance and bring about bold change. On the notion of outdoor spaces, also want to highlight a really kind of data-driven work that the city of Boston, Massachusetts did. And we have seen this, I'm mentioning Boston, very big city with a lot of resources. We've seen very similar efforts and have funded and supported very similar efforts through the Age Friendly Network in communities of all sizes, from cities of 50 to cities of 1,000 to 20,000 to cities like Boston. But I'm highlighting this one because it was a very interesting approach. The city used an aging lens to conduct an age-friendly bench equity study. And they identified gaps in their infrastructure where benches were not available for older adults, particularly in neighborhoods that were predominantly made up of older adults. So then they used the grant to fill those gaps and place benches marked as kind of age-friendly in nature. Sorry, I think I got muted. And more importantly, gave folks a place to sit, which just that kind of core foundation of when you're walking, having a place to sit and rest, and the dignity of having that without having to walk miles and miles. The next area I want to talk about is social inclusion, which is just an important domain. And one of the ways that we have seen communities undertake this, again, in this small, quick, but impactful way, is through intergenerational art programs. And I know that these have also been used across the state of Utah as well, but in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a program called Go, Go, Go encouraged residents to get outdoors, brought older adults out to participate in public art, plein air painting, and other efforts with youth, and forged those social connections and reached out to communities. I saw on the graphic earlier when we were looking at the recap from yesterday, the importance of in language, but reached out to folks in language and brought folks from across the community into conversations with each other, and did that shared activity, which is so important to bond folks across generations. The last one I want to highlight is from Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is focused on communication and strengthening connections. Again, another theme that I saw in the graphic from yesterday was the importance of high-speed internet and broadband connections to strengthen folks' ability to engage with each other. And at the height of the pandemic, the city of Chattanooga received a grant to establish a team made up of tech-savvy seniors as well as youth to do virtual training, which was very difficult to do during the pandemic, but virtual training with older adults to kind of train them on tech skills and devices so that they could connect with members of their community and their family to ensure that folks were not isolated during the pandemic. So leading into the pandemic, I think those are kind of some of the really impactful, small, quick things that we can do to jumpstart and bring about the bold, broad change that we were talking about earlier. And we really saw this come to the fore in the pandemic. I think y'all have probably spent plenty of time talking about it already, but I do want to underscore the importance of age-friendly neighborhoods in preparing folks for response. So one of the things, this is a quote from Mayor Steve Benjamin from Columbia, South Carolina, and I'll just read it. He shared this with us. The most effective thing that they did as a city was recognize that it wasn't just on them to lead. They recognized that they had incredible community organizations at the neighborhood level, and the city saw their role as supporting them and helping them scale up neighborhood solutions to solve community challenges more broadly. And I think that really underscores the importance of those neighborhood connections, neighborhood organizations, and neighborhood partnerships. And we saw in a survey of members across the network at the peak of COVID and right after COVID, and we asked them what was the most impactful thing that you had from your age-friendly work in your response to COVID-19. You see it up here on the screen. It was partnerships, and it was the relationships formed with folks. So the effort of going through that age-friendly conversation, building the advisory boards, building the relationships, and strengthening connections that might have been there before, or forging connections that weren't there previously, enabled them to respond quicker. Y'all know this well. It's much easier to pick up the phone and call somebody you know than try to hunt through the phone book and look through the web to find somebody when they're strapped with COVID-19 response. So those partnerships that were in place and the communication and outreach that had happened strengthened the ability to reach people on the neighborhood level, which is where these social connections were formed and where social isolation was prevented during COVID-19 across the country. So with that, those were really the key points that I wanted to hit and underscore, is the importance of neighborhoods for all ages, and how when we look at age-friendly and we think about it through the lens of the older adult, we're going to create and strengthen places that are great for all ages, which is going to better empower older adults. It's going to better empower future residents of the community. And the importance of, when it's time to take bold action, sometimes you just need that first step and that first jolt to build something bigger. And we've seen communities do this across the country, and I know that this is the case across the state in Utah as well. So with that, I just want to reference, if you would like to learn more about any of the things I mentioned, any of the resources that are available, you can go to aarp.org/livable. There are way too many resources on there. You can get lost in our website, but there are a lot of rich resources that you can use. I'll highlight a couple quick ones here. We have a free weekly newsletter. We have a searchable map where you can look up all of the roughly 1,100 community challenge grants across the country and the 700 members of the Age Friendly Network. Learn about their action plans, learn about what they've achieved, and see if there's things that you can model or replicate or learn from. AARP also has a livability index, which allows you to assess the livability of your community and peer ones, compare yourself to others. And then we also have, as I mentioned, loads of free resources and publications. These are free to download, free to order at no charge. AARP produces them in hopes that folks will use them to improve their communities. So with that, again, I want to thank you so much for having me here. I'm delighted to be a part of this conversation. I'm really looking forward to hearing from Dr. Diaz Moore and Rob to kind of reflect on what they're seeing at the neighborhood level. And again, just commend you for hosting this conversation and commend you for all of the work that you're doing to empower older adults across the state.